Lecture 7 is about Minto-Morley reforms, Lucknow Pact and Rowlatt Act in India. This is a series of lectures that we are conducting for the support of the GCE O-level students and CSS candidates and MA Pakistan Studies students regarding their paper of Pakistan Studies in Cambridge University and in other Pakistani universities, and CSS candidates for their competitive exams. Dr. Nasir Hussain is here to support my youth of Pakistan, and I would request to subscribe my channel to make it popular amongst the students for their benefit. Let's start the topic. One is Minto-Morley reforms. Minto-Morley reforms were implemented in India in 1909. Its other name is India Act 1909. It was the brainchild of Morley and Minto. Morley was the Secretary of State for India who belonged to the Liberal Party and came into power there in 1908. And Lord Minto was the Viceroy of India. So Morley cherished the desire to bring the moderates into the fold of the governments and to accumulate them at one place, so that the revolutionary activities that were started by the Hindu extremists due to partition of India could be curtailed to some extent by giving them this piece of new reforms. So Morley and Minto, they brought the new reforms in 1909. These reforms were not a big chunk of political independence or political sharing in the government. It was just a beginning towards the democracy. So some important points of this Minto-Morley reforms. Number one, the number of the seats in the central legislative assemblies were increased from 16 to 60. And there were two types of memberships. One was known as the nominated and the other one known as the elected members. The number of the nominated, who mostly were the British officials and nominated by the Governor General or the Viceroy, they dominated the Central Executive Council of the Viceroy as well as Central Assembly. So far as concerns the number of elected members, their number was very small in the assemblies. Number two, second important point of this Minto-Morley reforms was the number of seats in the provincial assemblies based upon the population of the provinces, but they shouldn't exceed from 30 to 40, 45. And the most important point in this reform was from the Muslim point of view, and that was the separate electorate was granted to the Muslims on the demand of the similar deputation, and it was granted to the universities and other some kind of institutions to participate in that. But the Muslim community was given the right of separate electorate. So now the Muslim candidate could contest the Muslims only, and Hindu could contest the Hindus only. And the Hindus and the Indians were announced, Muslims and others, they were announced to become the part of the Viceroy's Executive Council. So the very famous Hindu leader S.P. Sinha, who later came to be known as Lord Sinha, he became the member of the Viceroy Executive Council first time, and later he was appointed as a governor of a province in India. When these reforms were announced and implemented, it was the time when Congress had divided into two groups, as already we have discussed in the previous lecture, into moderates and the extremist groups. So the extremists refused to accept it, and moderates started to join and contested the elections. Actually, Congress was not happy with this, and Muslim League also was not happy with it, because they believed that actual power lies in the office of the Governor General and the governors of the provinces. So they were not happy with it, and they decided to demand self-rule. So in the long run, we see that Muslim League and Congress leaders who were the moderates, like Gokhale from Congress, Rojini Naidu from Congress, Kim Ajmal Khan, Quaid-e-Azam and others from Muslim League, they decided to bring a peace amongst the Muslims and the Hindus, and to reach on some conclusion and agreement, so that they could launch a combined effort for the freedom of India. If freedom was not granted, then they were trying to get maximum from the British government in the next piece of reforms that the British had announced would be given in 1919. So in 1911, the Congress leadership moderates and the Muslim leadership moderates started to work on it. In 1913, this development further, went ahead when Quaid-e-Azam joined Muslim League, and Muslim League changed its objectives and brought another one into incorporated another object of the self-rule on the following in the footsteps of Congress. So then these leaders became more closer to each other. In 1914, the First World War started in Europe, and that was the time when the British needed the support of Indians. So Indian gave a lot of sacrifices and support to the British. They gave their manpower. They also gave their money. They gave them political, moral supports, and even their crops and kerosene, oil, etc. They supported by all means to the British. And that was the time when the moderates from Congress and Muslim League were making efforts to reach on some truce and reach on some sort of agreement among them. And then the major negotiator between these two parties, Muslim League and All Indian National Congress, was Quaid-e-Azam, because Quaid-e-Azam joined Muslim League in 1913 with the condition that he would continue as a member of Congress as well as a member of the All Indian Muslim League. So Jinnah played very important role, and both parties drafted a pact which is known in the history as the Lucknow Pact. So then they decided to hold their conferences or annual sessions in Lucknow city. Congress session was presided over by Ambika Charan, and then the other Muslim League was also Muslim League also held its session in Lucknow. So the both parties and their executive councils approved the Lucknow Pact that was signed by the parties, to major Muslim party, All India Muslim League, and as well as Indian National Congress. So these reached on first and the last time on an agreement that is known as the Lucknow Pact. The important feature of the Lucknow Pact was, number one, both parties reached on this agreement that India must be given self-rule. So they demanded self-rule for India. Weightage and parity system was introduced in India. Was demanded. Weightage and parity system means where Hindus were majority in the provincial assemblies, they would lessen their number of seats and increasing the number of seats for Muslims, as well as Muslims provinces where Muslims were in majority, they would lessen the seats. In Punjab and Bengal, both the Hindus and Muslims would have 50-50%. So Muslims, surrendered their thin majority in the assembly representation. Then no bill regarding to any community of India could be passed from the provincial or federal assembly if third, fourth or 75% of the members opposed it. And they also demanded the separation of judiciary from the executive, and that was first time very revolutionary demand, that judiciary and executive should be separated, because the magistrate or the deputy commissioner of the district, they held both power, as a judge and as an administrator. So that was demanded that the judiciary should be separated from, and then from Hindu financial autonomy for the provinces was also demanded. The impacts of the Lucknow Pacts are very important to have a, to have a certain gallance upon them. This was first time in the history of India that Congress and Muslim League signed an agreement. After Lucknow Pact, both political parties could not reach on any agreement. Number two, that was the time, according to Khalid bin Saeed, in his book Pakistan, the Formative Phase, he wrote that that was the peak of the Hindu-Muslim unity that started from 1911 onwards and lasted till 1921 and 2 at the till the end of the Khilafat movement. And number three, Jinnah played very important role from Pakistani point of view, and an Indian even accepted his role, and he played as a principal negotiators and brought both the parties on this conclusion in this pact. Gokhale, Sarojini Naidu, and Lala Lajpat Rai, Hakim Ajmal, and Sayyid Ahmad Chatari, and many other leaders from Hindu and Muslims, they actually brought this agreement into reality. As far as concerns the role of Congress actually first time accepted that Muslims are a separate nation, and they accepted the electorate for the Muslims, separate electorate for the Muslims in the assemblies. So when the Congress accepted separate electorate for the Muslims, actually that was the surrender of their stance of secular party, and they accepted it but by accepting this separate electorate, actually they accepted that tension, communal tension in India would increase in future. And second, when they signed agreement with Muslim League, they accepted that Muslim League is a second important party in the Indian subcontinent. So Congress also surrendered its stance that they are the sole representatives of the Indians. Now they had accepted Congress. They had accepted Congress and Muslim League are two different political parties who represented two different communities. So this agreement, whereas we appreciate the agreement that by accepting each other, they reached on the coexistence, and they started to act upon the principle of coexistence for both communities. They reached on this a point that without combining them and without unity, they could not move forward. Although apparently it seems that Lucknow Pact brought the unity amongst the Hindus and the Muslims, but the critical point is that Congress surrendered its secular face, and Muslim League emerged as a communal party. So both actually entrapped by the divide and rule, because the acceptance of the separate electorate means that Congress had surrendered joint electorate, and Muslim League won in this struggle. And the British third party who were ruling India, they were also benefited through this divide and rule, because apparently it seemed vanished, but it continued under surface. So this paradox of the Lucknow Pact is very important to understand for the students of history. Second important point is that Chaudhry Khaliquzzaman, in his book Pathway to Pakistan, he criticized the principle of parity or weightage. He was of the opinion that by surrendering majority in Punjab and Bengal, Muslims could not get majority in the Hindu majority provinces. They would remain minority, and they had surrendered their majority where they were actually in the position to rule. So he criticized it. Iqbal to some extent was not agreed with this point at that time. He also criticized the principle of parity. So this Lucknow Pact brought a fame to Jinnah, and he emerged to be known as ambassador of Hindu-Muslim unity, who created the unity amongst the Muslims and Hindus. This Lucknow Pact was a peak of the Hindu-Muslim unity that was led, that led the both nations remained together till 1920. In 1919, the Khilafat movement was launched due to the problems of the World War ended and the occupation of different areas which were part of the Turkish Ottoman Empire. We would discuss this separately. But in the meanwhile, before 1919 Indian Councils Act, a committee of committee of jurists was established by the British government under the leadership of Sir Sidney Rowlatt, and he prepared an act that was passed by the parliament to suppress the revolutionary activities that was increasingly increased in India due to Lucknow Pact and the unity between the Hindus and Muslims. So British were afraid of spreading another revolution. They wanted to curtail it. So Sidney Rowlatt brought a bill in the assembly, and that bill was passed, and it is known as Rowlatt Act on the name of Sidney Rowlatt. The three important points of the Rowlatt Act actually are very important. Number one, the police could register case against any Indians and could arrest any Indian without granting him or her a bail, and any Indian could be expelled from his native district or province to any place in India as a punishment if he is found involved in any kind of activities. And this bill was severely opposed in the Central Executive Council and in the Assembly by Gandhi and by Madan Mohan Malviya and Jinnah. Muhammad Ali Jinnah, Quaid-e-Azam also played a very important role against this, and he opposed it. So these three leaders resigned from the Rowlatt Act, and then the riots broke out against this Rowlatt Act. Protests started in Delhi, particularly it became very severe in Punjab. To the reaction of the Rowlatt Act, the Jallianwala massacre occurred in April in 1919 when a Baisakhi Mela of the Sikh community was being held in Jallianwala, Amritsar, and the villagers from all parts of Punjab reached there because Amritsar is very important for the Sikh community. Number one, Golden Temple is there, their religious place, very sacred to them, and second, that was the city where they came to enjoy the Baisakhi festival. So in the meanwhile, Kichlu and other, they made speeches, and then that was the time when they arranged a protest in a stadium, you may say, or in a ground that was in the mid of the cities where the Sikh and Hindus and Muslims, they gathered, and then the General Dyer was ordered to ordered to control this mob and this protest. So he brought his force and he closed all the exit of this ground, and then without giving any warning to disperse the crowd, he asked his forces to open firing direct to the masses and the people and the protesters. So according to the British record and British historians, 400 people died straightforwardly in the firing, but the Indian historians and Pakistani historians, they concluded that more than 1,000 people died in this this protest against the Rowlatt Act in Jallianwala Bagh in Amritsar. And all the people were, they were peacefully protesting against. They gathered in a ground. They were not having any kind of weapons, but O'Dyer or General Dyer opened firing upon them. And later when his trial started and he was asked, why did you do it? He simply said, I had no other option except firing upon this mob, and he did it. because he wanted to establish the fear of the might of the British Empire. He replied to the trial court that he wanted to establish and instill the fear of the British Empire in the minds of the Indians, and in this way, this massacre further, became prominent event that brought the Muslims and Hindus more closer to them, and now their struggle started with a new fervor and zeal. But these three events, when we discuss, although they are very small and brief topics in the history, but they are very, very important because these three major events. Number one, Minto-Morley reforms were very important because they were the first step toward the constitutional reforms in India. Though the number of the voter was very small and the number of seats in the assemblies were very thin for the people of India, but it was a step forward towards the establishment of democracy and to provide the training to the political parties of India. As far as as long as concerned the Lucknow Pact, that was the peak time and first and the last agreement between the Congress and the Muslim League, and Congress accepted the existence of the Muslims as a major population after Hindus, and they accepted Muslim League as a second party which represented the Muslims. The Rowlatt Act was totally against the basic human rights, so it was known as the Black Law. It was known as the Black Rowlatt Act by Jinnah declared it, and he said, I could not continue in the assembly which passed this Black Law, so they resigned it. And this Rowlatt Act actually, on the one hand, brought the killings of the people, and on the other hand, it united the Indians to move forward for their rights and struggles. So when the second piece of political and constitutional reforms were announced, which are known as Montague-Chelmsford reforms, the British had benefited from the Lucknow Pact and the struggle of the Muslims and Hindus which they were carrying out together. Now we come up to the question number one: why was Morley-Minto reforms introduced? What were their main points and what is their importance? So is the question with why was Lucknow Pact signed? What were its important clauses and its impacts on the history of India? And third is, was Rowlatt Act a black law? And why did, are you agreed or disagreed? So you need to talk both that it was against the, the human rights, and Muslims and Hindus did not approve it of. And massacre of Jallianwala Bagh was totally a criminal war crime against the humanity that was even not approved by the Britishers even. And the General Dyer, who was involved in it, he was tried later,